News Talk 1340 KROC AM. Good morning. I'm Andy Brownell. It's a Monday. It is the fourth Monday of the month, and that means it is time for the Power of Learning show with Jim Walters. Jim, thanks for coming back into the studios this morning. I hope the roads were not too slick for you.
No, they were great.
I got you on the wrong microphone. There we go.
Oh, no, they were great, and thank you. Welcome to you to the Power of Learning show.
I can't believe it's already been a month since we've tackled critical thinking and ways to use critical thinking skills to your own advantage.
That's
and
what we
our
do.
Society's advantage, right?
That's what we do. And, it doesn't take much to come to the conclusion that there's a real lack of critical thinking, certainly in our country. And I think we need to be critical of ourselves in order to improve. And that's what we do here, right? And you and I had talked about this show earlier, and we thought a good topic to kind of frame our talk today. Hopefully we'll get a lot of calls today. That's what I'm hoping.
All right, we'll throw that number out, by the way, 282-1234.
Yeah, and what we're talking about is daring to disagree. You know, critical thinking is all about questioning. It is critical thinkers strive for the truth, and that means you got to put a lot of things aside to get at the truth. And so, dare to disagree is the frame for today. And there's a great example going on right now, and that is in Ferguson, Missouri, where we've got a lot of folks that are daring to disagree. So what's the problem? What's the problem? What's all the news media there for? What is going on? Well, what I'm getting at is hypothetical, or it's rhetorical. But I mean, what really is going on that we have such a problem with folks that are daring to disagree? Well,
I would guess that they are breaking windows and burning vehicles. Well, they did this past summer. We better put it that way. We haven't had the violent outbreaks so far with the wait for the grand jury's decision. But what happened over the past summer was anarchy.
Well, exactly, and I really wanted to tee it up just to kind of just to really draw this line of demarcation, if you will. There's disagreeing, and then there's disagreeing. There's disagreeing that is not founded on good thinking, and there's disagreeing that is founded on good thinking practice. What we see going on in Ferguson with a lot of the protesters is not very good thinking, and I think we let's nail that today and come to a conclusion about how we need to go forward to come to better, to improve the process and come to better decisions.
Okay, we're going to dare to disagree is the topic today. How to disagree
intelligently.
Okay.
How about that? Let's just put it out there.
All right, 25 degrees in the downtown. Jim Walters is here. The Power of Learning show will be back in just a moment on KROC AM.
KROC AM.
It is brought to you by Mystic Lake Casino. Dancing with the Stars Live is coming to Mystic Lake January 25th. See Mark Ballas, Whitney Carson, and other fan favorites live in the Mystic Showroom. Get tickets now at mysticlake.com. Today, we're expecting some snow and a high in the upper 20s. It's going to be windy. Total accumulation, maybe an inch or two. Tonight, cloudy, snow again likely, but a dusting is all we're expecting. A low of 13, and then mid to upper 20s tomorrow with partly cloudy skies. And we get to tomorrow night, a low of about 20 degrees and a chance of snow developing. On Wednesday, a chance of snow, maybe an inch, and a high of 30. That'll bring in some colder air. 15 on Thanksgiving Day with partly cloudy skies. Should get back into the upper 20s with a chance of snow on Friday and near 30 on Saturday with mostly cloudy skies. Right now, 25 degrees downtown Rochester. KROC AM. It's 18 minutes past 10 o'clock. On a Monday morning, it's the Power of Learning show with Jim Walters. And today we're talking about dare to disagree and how we term it, how to disagree intelligently. Yes. Is that the best way to describe this?
Well, I think it's intelligently, and and what I'm getting at there is when I say intelligently, I'm talking about purposeful disagreement, or respectful discourse is another way to say it. And I think it does take some real intelligence, some real wisdom, if you will, to just understand that, you know what, you could be wrong. And we critical thinkers, right? That's what we're well aware of, that we can be wrong.
You better be aware of that.
Yeah.
Because you'll be blindsided if you're not.
But something happens when we talk about, by the way, folks, we're using the Ferguson protests as an example of disagreement, which is let's get it out the door here. That is
okay.
Constructive criticism is absolutely required in society, in our organizations, in our families. What we're talking about here, though, is we're talking about daring to disagree in a way that does not turn into a catastrophe, and that's what we
Which
have.
you saw last summer, right?
And what we see in Ferguson.
Okay, so to lay it out, put the lay of the land is we had a young man, unarmed, was shot to death by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. While the officer was, it started out as from what we know, and that's everything I'm going to say is going to be prefaced by from what we know, was the officer approached this young man, at some point became aware that the young man was possibly connected to a crime. There was an incident that occurred. At this point, we're not clear exactly what happened, and the officer withdrew his weapon and shot the young man multiple times, and the young man died. And from that, we as a country split into two camps. If you were going to believe media reports, because that's the thing drives me crazy about this, is that the cop was right. No matter what, we're going to find ways to make sure that the officer's actions were justified, no matter what. And the other side would be the young man was completely innocent, and he was murdered by the police officer, and the facts be damned. We're going to assume the worst, and that's the collision course we're on today.
Oh, exactly. And so that to me is why we're dedicating this show, and we should maybe dedicate a lot of shows to specific issues like Ferguson, but it is about critical thinking. I've listened to President Obama, to others that talk about the need for common sense, let alone critical thinking. So what we're trying to do is use Ferguson as an example of non-critical thinking. That is, as you said, Andy, what we're doing is we're taking snippets that fit our biases. We want to see, for instance, there's those that want to see the cop, Wilson, guilty no matter what. So what we're going to hear, what we're going to see, what our antennae are cued to hear are things that, support the fact that, or the notion
right,
that Wilson is biased. On the other, or not biased, but is guilty. And on the other side, we have those that believe absolutely not, this can't be true, that he was totally justified, Wilson, in then shooting this person. And so we have those then that have primed their mind, just like the other folks have, to hear, see, and listen to things that are in support that Wilson, in fact, is innocent in this whole thing. The whole thing here resides on critical thinking, our ability to either think critically or not think critically. Again, how do we get there? Well, critical thinkers ask questions, and that's not what's going on right now with probably both groups. But certainly, as I watched this CNN interview the other day, I felt so sorry for the reporter. He tried to talk to one of the protesters, and their brain was so hijacked, we call it, by their quick primal brain, that all emotion, the emotion ruled the day, not what comes from our thinking brain. That blob we have on top. I mean, that really is what's going on, and it takes learning. It takes the ability. It takes awareness of how our brain works to overcome that desire to give into our biases and let that primal brain have its way.
Okay, you mentioned the street protester and the attempt to interview the street protester. Do we fault the street protester, or do we fault those in leadership who seem to be fanning the fires, or fanning the flames.
Well, boy, we've only got an hour-long show, and I'm, but this is absolutely, what a great question, Andy. In my view, we can absolutely fault the protester. We can fault anybody that is commenting about this situation if they have not done their homework. Here's what I'm saying: when we talk about when we talk about daring to disagree, there's obligations that come with that. And the first obligation, in my view, like any good critical thinker, I suppose, is that, all right, I need to get myself informed. What is really going on? And you mentioned earlier, well, all we really have is what the media report. So then what it reverts to is we must trust the institutions that have more information than we do. And to me, that is where the problem lies. We have a breakdown of our institutions to the degree that we don't trust them anymore. Every institution, whether it's religion, education, government, and on, every institution, in my view, has broken down so severely that we as a society have lost a good measure of trust with those organizations. And so when we don't have trust, then we're going off and we're making decisions based on our limited information, and we're getting in trouble. And I think, at least with this CNN interview, that's exactly what I saw.
Okay, the breakdown in levels of trust with the institution. On the other side of the argument, I see blanket trust in the institution, that no matter what, we're going to assume that the law officer was right, no matter what. In this case, I'm not making any decision at all because I don't have enough facts. But I'm getting that pushback as a reaction to what happened in Ferguson last summer. That, well, look at what they're doing. Obviously, this is out of control. That we must, at all times, trust this institution. And you're pointing out that things have happened over the last 30, 40 years that have eroded that trust to the point where people are having a hard time believing in what our leaders are telling us.
Right. And I think when we have that erosion of trust, what happens is that now we start moving in a way where it's tit for tat. We've got to put our information together so it supports our view, and the other side is putting together information that supports their view. And instead of having an open or curious mind about truly what has gone on, and you said it right, there is this, surely with any organization, there is this, it's called sociocentric thinking, just like egocentric thinking, where, egocentric thinking refers to, thinking what's best for me. Ego, what's best for me. Well, we do the same thing in a social way, sociocentric thinking. In this case, the police department certainly, to a varying degree, thinks in terms of what's best for their social unit, the police force. And we have to make sure that we break those walls down in order to get to the truth. Just like we have to do the same thing on the side of the protesters that are we've talked about this already, that are making decisions or drawing conclusions based on limited information.
Okay, this is a fascinating topic to me because the mob mentality is a hard thing to overcome, and you have, especially you and I are no longer in that boat, but young people who he's frowning at me.
Wait a minute. I think you're being kind. I'm older than you are.
Yeah, I know, but I unfortunately not able to put myself into that group anymore, where I have an 18-year-old son.
Right.
And when I see the way he views world events, he tries to stay up to date on current he is easily inflamed and outraged and wants to take immediate action. And off the air, you and I talked about the role of wisdom, and you mentioned it briefly as we were talking. And the expectation that the young person would have wisdom is misplaced, to say the very least. How much of this is, looking specifically at Ferguson, Missouri, a lack of wisdom within the community because you have nothing to check the young people. The young people, just through the very nature of hormones and human development, are going to be easily inflamed and quick to spring to action, whereas people our age are more likely to say, hey, let's slow down, sit back, people. We need to let calmer minds prevail, find out what's really happening here before we go and start burning cars and throwing rocks through windows. And and it's not just Ferguson. I see it as a society as a whole. We don't have that check in place anymore. It doesn't seem to be in place anymore.
Right. Again, we're just using Ferguson because it's in the news right now, but right. We could be talking about 1,000 different situations. But yeah, when Andy and I were talking, we were talking about this notion of wisdom and just what that means, and we think that, or at least I think that is part of the problem here. And what I mean by that is, there's intelligence, which is to know things, if you will. Our ability to solve problems, for example, and then there's knowledge or experience, I should say, and wisdom is the product of the two. And I've heard it said, not by several folks, that the younger folks, I'm even hesitating saying this, but it's the kind of the whatever generation. And when it's the whatever generation, that means, well, I'll just accept. And, I think that's a very big, significant contributor to this whole lack of wisdom. Wisdom is about listening to others that have more experience or other experiences than what you have, and taking whatever you can from that and making it part of who you are. I'm seeing, just for a long time now, just I have, and here we go with the breakdown of institutions again. I have my way of thinking, biased as it might be, and I would venture to say that a lot of folks don't realize just that is to be very biased, to just stick to your ways of thinking. But I see it all the time that, that's just me. That's the way I am. And it's whatever, and that's not okay. And again, to loop back, I think that's a major problem in what's going on today in places like Ferguson, that this is the way I am. I'm not going to trust our institutions that have more information. I'm going to stick with what I think, what my limited experiences are. I'm not going to listen to other experiences. We have a real breakdown.
All right.
So
we have to take a break for news. 282-1234 is the number. We'd love to have you join the conversation after the news break. It's 25 in downtown Rochester at KROC AM. More of the Power of Learning show with Jim Walters after the news break. KROC AM, 25 degrees. I'm Andy Brownell, Rochester today with the Power of Learning show with Jim Walters. We've got until 11 o'clock. We'd love your calls if you'd like to join the conversation. 282-1234, talking about Ferguson, Missouri, the conflict that is taking place and brewing. A lot of concern about security with the grand jury indictment, or lack of indictment, I better say, a no bill coming perhaps any hour now. The grand jury is expected to reconvene today, and there's an anticipation that some sort of announcement is just around the corner, and a lot of folks on edge and hoping to avoid a repeat of this past summer when we had several weeks of anarchy breaking out in a city right in the middle of our country. And I guess what we're talking about now would be...
Well, we were talking about...
yeah, go ahead.
We were talking about, the problem is that both there's a polarized thing going on here. That is, you have the protesters that have in their mind, as we spoke, this is the way it is. This is based on my experience. This is what's going on. And on the other side, the police department, they too have their biases and their antennae out for what supports their position. No doubt, like you say, we might use a blanket approach to things. The thing that is not happening here is we use this term wisdom to to seek the experience and the knowledge of others, and we're not doing that because of the breakdown of institutions. That's what we've talked about. And, I want to share a real-life example. I was privy to a conversation, and it went something like this. This person was talking about that they had a health exam and that they were considered obese. This person is in great shape, but their BMI, whatever, they were considered obese. The conversation went something like this: "Wow, we'll call him Bill. Well, Bill, gosh, that can't be. My goodness, I'd love to be in your shape." And, they haven't changed those guidelines, Bill, in a long time. Bill says, well, wait a minute, should those guidelines change? And so there was a little talk about that. And then ultimately, what will happen is if we can't discredit if the information, if the standards haven't been changed, if we can't discredit that, then we'll start attacking the source, the person, if you will. Now think about what's going on in Ferguson and those other examples. We're just using Ferguson as an example. Think about what's going on with respect to the situation I just talked about. We attack the information.
Viewer.
And in fact, we won't even listen to the information because we are stuck with our biases and we want it to be so. I'm talking about both sides.
Oh, absolutely.
And so then what we'll do then if when we don't do that, we'll start attacking the person. It's called an ad hominem attack, and that's what we'll do because we really don't want to know the truth, and that is what that is not what critical thinkers do, and this show is about critical thinking. So I just wanted to share that story, and that is the problem. We want to talk about what do we do about this, but we want to make sure we kind of nail down at the very root of the problem, what really is going on. And I think that provides a good example. We're stuck on our biases because we fail or don't want to listen. We don't know how to listen to others' experiences.
All right, Jim. Is it even remotely possible to have an entire society of critical thinkers? What I'm getting at is, should that be a role of a segment of the society? I'm trying to be anthropological.
Yeah, sure. What a great question. I know I read you loud and clear, and I think
the chief of the village.
I think realistically, Andy, that's isn't that really isn't that what's going to happen anyway? And so then, to me, the answer, or at least where the breakdown is that we don't respect the chief. You use the word chief or the elder.
Yeah.
We don't respect them. So we have this breakdown. See, the elders in our society are businesses, our government, our education. Those institutions have
the man.
They are. And when we don't have respect, we don't have trust. And so we have what we have. Using, again, Ferguson, we have just chaos.
We get into this discussion. People are going to jump all over me for this, but I'm going to just despise baby boomers by the end of this discussion. Because I start to think in the back of my head here, I'm going to go back and go to, I was a little kid in the 1960s. I came to age in the 1970s and had to pay some of the price for what happened in the 1960s. But not really. I'm just being facetious when I say that. But there was this focus on the youth generation, the me generation. There was so much selfishness and narcissism that took place.
Yep.
And it warped the media, and it did. You look at the focus even today is if you were to watch a movie that was made in the 1950s, early 1960s, and watch a movie that was made by the late 1960s or into the 70s, you'll see right away that the emphasis had changed from dialogue and writing and acting to flesh and action and violence. And the focus was based upon attracting that youth audience and do no matter what you can do to attract youth. And everything it actually became to the point where as we moved on that you were degrading, discrediting may be the right word, the older generations and the wisdom that they could bring to the table. And it was it's not a matter of ignoring it. It's almost a matter of completely rejecting it. And I think that's still echoing through our society today. That what do you know, old man?
Yeah,
I mean that's part of the growing up process. It is, but at some point you buckle down and you realize, you know what, the old man knows something.
Right. That's right. Well, again, we loop right back to the lack of respect, and a great observation, by the way, Andy. That really makes a lot of sense. And
go ahead and discredit me, though.
No, I'm not. All I want to say is I am a baby boomer, and there's some of us I think that are. No, I won't even go there. But so we've outlined a real problem here, and we've talked about some of the fix, and that is that at least. We haven't peeled the onion down to the core yet, and I don't know that we can on this show. But at least right around that core are things like an non-curious mind. We have to have a curious mind about our lives, and without it, then we are stuck on our biases. We make fallacious arguments then as a result, and we go nowhere. And that is what is happening. I will tell you the fix that I'm saying we can't really talk about is home life. I believe that, we look to education to fix Johnny and Sally, but Johnny and Sally can't be fixed solely by our education, secondary education. It starts at home. And so that's why I think breakdown of the family is so critical to the health of a society, and we're not a healthy society, and we're seeing why.
All right, we do have a call, Jim. 282-1234 is the number. Jim Walters is here, the Power of Learning Show, KROC AM. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Thank you for tackling such a incendiary issue.
Right.
As your example. It's very brave, and I appreciate that. It also, I think, brings things into focus very quickly. I think you're right as far as the, what do you call it,
sociocentric thinking.
Yeah, where you can just pretty much take a population graph of the O.J. Simpson verdict in reaction to that.
Yep.
And you see, unfortunately, there's a similar pattern. The other thing that bothers me about the example that you use, not that you're using it, but the first eyewitness that was widely reported turned out to be the guy who was helping him rob the little store.
And he's still quoted, by the way.
Yes, he is. And the other thing that concerns me about that is that you very quickly had a great number of people, yep, that's exactly the story. One of the things that years and years ago, I had to do investigation work in the military. And one of the things you look for is the story too perfect? And you have to challenge it. No, wait a minute. Did all those people see exactly the same thing? And it kind of gets, maybe it feeds into your critical thinking process, but you have to wonder, how is that possible? Because more typically you would find some variation between the stories, but these came out pretty much cookie cutter.
Well, sure.
I just want to make those comments. Again, thank you for.
Yeah, but I'm going to extrapolate on that too, because what you see, and we did see this past summer, was the witnesses that you're speaking of that make them. Let's put it this way: they make themselves easily available to the media, because you'll see it time and time again, and they are the boisterous, enthusiastic witness who has, and oftentimes, a point of view that they would like expressed in a story. Right or wrong, it's out there. It's part of what you do. The cops, on the other hand, the officers, I better say, the investigators, they'll obviously talk to those people as well, but they will also, as you pointed out, as an investigator, go into the weeds and do a canvass and try to talk to everybody who possibly could know something. And it's their statements that went to the grand jury and at this point remain secret that we have no access to and the media has access to. And and the media will get a lot of condemnation because, of course, the witnesses that were available to them were the type of witnesses that you're talking about.
Well, and you know, what a great comment, by the way, to this to the listener, and I want to comment too and add on to what he talked about with regard to memory, and that's a great point to bring up. You know, law enforcement, our judicial system certainly understands that our human memories are horrible. Our memories are horrible, and we just have to understand that. You know, there's a great example. I think her name is Jane Hill. She is the only known to witness, the only known person. I'm not saying this right. She was an eyewitness to the JFK assassination, and when they interviewed her, she remembered JFK getting shot. You know, we remember things that are emotionally laden. It's called flashbulb memory, but 2 years later, or I think it was a year later, actually, they asked her again about what she saw. Well, she saw all kinds of things. She was able to say she saw a gunshot from a building. She remembered all kinds of things. My point is this. Not only are our memories horrible, but we do something worse, and it's called confabulation. We will actually fill in the gaps. Our brain will do that. And law enforcement knows this, and attorneys certainly know this, that you can't rely on memory. But now look at, with regard what this gentleman said, and about perfect information and the like, and what's happening in Ferguson. Do you think we're doing a bit of confabulation?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, the bottom line here is, you know, the difference between when we had a society that had a less of a predisposition to react to things like this than today is our willingness to trust organizations, our institutions, if you will, that have greater information than we.
But I'm going to actually argue with you a little bit on that. I think that you're doing a little, what's the term? Conflation? Wait, I'm sorry.
Now you got me gone.
Yeah.
Confabulation.
Confabulation. Because we tend to look at what's happening today through a lens of that's distorted as well. If you start to dig through old newspaper accounts, you go back as far as they've been printing newspapers here in the United States. We didn't have 24-hour news channels with satellite trucks and internet communications that brought us these visuals instantaneously. But these eruptions of violence in localized areas over these sort of things have been happening not only here, but in other places around the world since the beginning of time. And oftentimes based upon false information that leads to, you know, the mob, let's put it that way. And I'm just saying, I just don't know if it's such a new thing or if we've changed or if it's just part of the way humans react to these sort of instances.
Well, and I'm certainly aware, and I'll tell you what I've done about that. I go out of my way to ask folks that are much older than myself. I'm continually asking them, were things really different? And you know what I hear? Every time, oh my goodness, yes. And we're talking about things different in the way society acts, and we get into it. I do that ad nauseum. Honestly, because you're right, Andy. It's not like this hasn't happened in the past.
No.
The question is there more of it, or are we just simply reporting it because we have greater abilities to report it?
Or is it, you know, the egg before the chicken argument? Is it happening more because it's being reported more?
Yeah.
When you put the TV cameras in front of people, all of a sudden people's behavior changes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, you know, the bottom line is, regardless of whether or not it's happening more or less or whatever, it's not a good thing what's happening, and that's what we're talking about. And, you know, what we're saying is that we've got to help folks think better.
Okay, we're going to talk about how to help folks think better. If I can get the sentence out of my mouth. We have to take a break. It's that time already. It's 6 minutes away from 11 o'clock. Thanks for the call. 282-1234 is our number. And I'll be back with more of the Power of Learning show with Jim Walters after this break on KROC AM.
KROC AM.
It's brought to you by Mystic Lake Casino. Dancing with the Stars is coming live to Mystic Lake January 25th. See Mark Ballas, Whitney Carson, and other fan favorites live in the Mystic Showroom. Get tickets now at mysticlake.com. Today we could have some more snow, maybe an inch or so. high about 27 degrees. It's going to be windy. A little light snow possible tonight, low 13. And tomorrow, partly cloudy with a high of 26. Chance of snow developing late tomorrow night and continuing on Wednesday. Light accumulations, low tomorrow night in the low 20s. Wednesday's high 30. It won't last. Thanksgiving Day, partly cloudy and a high only in the teens. Chance of snow on Friday with a high of 27. It should be cloudy on Saturday with a high near 30 degrees. 24 degrees, cloudy skies right now. Downtown Rochester at KROC AM. It's 3 minutes away from 11 o'clock. Jim Walters in the studio with myself, Andy Brownell, for the Power of Learning show. And we're going to fix all the world's problems in 2.5 minutes, Jim.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yep. Well, look, what do we do about this? We've talked about the problem. What do we do? Well, two things that we can talk about. We only have a little bit of time, and that is one, critical thinking has got to be made part of the educational system at every level. Now, I don't know that it isn't or right now, but yeah. I'm just saying that if it isn't, we have got to incorporate courses in critical thinking at every level, not to reserve critical thinking for the higher levels of education like PhDs and the like. Every level of education must learn how to think better. And then, you and I were talking during the break. A lot of this has to do with standard of living. When your back is against the wall, you can take critical thinking and you can put it right over there on the shelf. What I'm all about is food and shelter at this point. I just need to survive. So the standard of living for a lot of folks, we've got to focus on how we can bring them up so that we have more of what we're talking about in the way of education and those kinds of things available to them. So, and in also, a nutshell, that's how I feel.
It ties together. You brought up the nuclear family and somehow finding ways to strengthen that, because that is where you find that support level, where the young person needing guidance knows where to look for guidance. If you have a functional family unit, and I'm going to throw that out there. Every family has some level of dysfunction. That's just part of the world. But
sure.
But at least you have a group of people that you can fall back on and lend support to and get support from. And a lot of these young folks right now are completely adrift because of a lack of that. And it could take multiple forms.
That's why I so believe in that how do we help restore quality family life? Well, mentor. And I just want to throw a blurb out there. I'm a mentor, and I think it's so important that we reach out and help replace what's missing in a lot of families. That maybe is the absolute core of improving.
We'll talk more next month. The Power of Learning Show, KROC AM Rochester. It's 11 o'clock.